beat 'em ups this gen. Part 6. Number 1.
And here we have Jakito Kentaros Revenge, which is coming in at my number 1. This is actually a old school style beat 'em up game that was on the Nintendo DS for a very, very long time. Now, this game is unique in the sense that not only is it presented in an old school 8-bit style, the character models on screen are very, very large. So it makes it difficult to be able to handle the obstacles like platforming within the game. And also it has RPG elements that allow you to unlock and go further only when you do these certain quests and to unlock certain things and find certain keys, which makes it a breath of fresh air for the beat 'em up genre. Graphically, it looks beautiful as far as the 8-bit style presentation, but obviously it's old school. It's a homage and a nod to back in the day style graphics. This game is absolutely a lot of fun. I'm glad that it finally made its way over to the, console platforms, right? Because it was only available, like I said, mobilely. It's a very inexpensive game. When it first came out, I think it was a little expensive, but now you can actually get it for a fairly decent price. And also remember that it's also available on the PlayStation 4, and I believe it's also available on the Nintendo Switch. So I recommend it because it's, beat 'em up with a breath of fresh air and something different in the genre.
Number 2.
And you guys know I did an extensive review on this one. Coming in at my number 2 is none other than Raging Justice. And Raging Justice really was an absolute pleasure and a very, very pleasant surprise. These guys, as I had the privilege to interview them with young Kano and to talk to them personally, they were very, very big fans of back in the day old school style beat 'em up, especially games like Streets of Rage and Vendetta and Crime Fighters and Final Fight, to name a few. You see that the graphic style is almost like claymation in the style and aesthetics of Wallace and Gromit games, but it makes it look kind of realistic, or photorealistic, right, if you will. And it works, even though it has a stiff look to it or nature. In reality, when you play the game, it's actually pretty fluid and works very, very, very well. My only caveat with this game is that it never had an online co-op 3-player mode, because it is 3 characters that are the main characters. Besides that, I was very impressed and I had a whole lot of fun with the game. Very well done, constructed, and you can tell they had a lot of love for the genre. The game was really inexpensive when it came out, and it's been on sale numerous times. No reason that if you're a beat 'em up fan not to own it or have it in your library. It is on PlayStation as well. It is on the Nintendo Switch. So I highly recommend it. You won't regret it. You should add it to your library.
Number 3.
Yes. Coming in at my number 3 is none other than, you guessed it, if you already haven't, well, it's called Dungeon Punks. And Dungeon Punks is a nod and throwback basically to Dungeons and Dragons from the Capcom era in the arcade that came out on Saturn and PlayStation 1 respectively back in the 90s, right? This is a 4-player beat 'em up that has a lot of elements of magic and RPG to it. Darius, but it definitely looks good, animation-wise, artwork looks very, very nice, but it doesn't have the smoothness that it needs. But it's still playable. It kind of feels like a cheap mobile-style game, or like something you would have played maybe on PC from an independent developer directly to PC that needs, kind of polish and maybe budgeting. But the game is still fun. It's still worth having because it's not a deal breaker in the sense that the budgeting and pricing of the game is very, very affordable. It's very cheap. It's probably around the $8 to $10 range. So in that sense, I could very, very well recommend it. It is 4 players. I believe it's 4-player online too. I'm not really sure, but it has a lot of back and forth, like the Metroidvania style games. You got to come back to certain areas, kind of like Guardian Heroes as well. So if you love those type of beat 'em up and style of games like Dungeons and Dragons and Guardian Heroes, this is right up your alley. Just not with the polish and refinements, but it definitely looks good and it's playable. So it's available on
Number 4.
This one is a very, very unusual one. This is called Bud Spencer and Terrence Hill's Slaps and Beans. And literally what you see in the title is part of the game. You can slap a bunch of people up with a bunch of baked beans, and and the sand and the actual pan in which you cook them in. And this is a game which has to do with 2 guys that are actually real gentlemen, actors that were action stars in the UK, I believe. They had a very long history of making a bunch of really good action movies with, I guess, comedy slapstick in it. And they were very, very popular in those states. And you go back and you see their movies, and what they actually did in this beat 'em up was they put a bunch of different levels based on each of their movies that they were in from back in the day. I wish I knew all their names so I can tell you, but I really don't, because I kind of ran into this game by dumb luck with my son. We found it, and it's really kind of a hidden gem, especially in the beat 'em up genre. It's very simple, but it does throw a lot of different gameplay mechanics at you. Like there's little mini games, quick time events. There's even games where you gotta try to drink more beer than the other person. Kind of like in the Mortal Kombat when you gotta break the stones with your hand. Very reminiscent to that. It is affordable, and it is on PlayStation, and I believe it's on Nintendo Switch as well. And it's just one of those games that you can have a good time with. It's co-op. I don't know if it's online co-op. I think it might be, but I recommend it. You guys should check it out.
Number 5.
And this one here is really a breath of fresh air too, because this one is basically bringing you the perspective of these Mexican brawlers that are in the streets fighting Mexican gangbangers in the neighborhood to protect their neighborhood, right? Of course. And it's cool to see Spanish characters in a beat 'em up in a different style and approach. It has amazing gameplay, a very good and robust combat system or level up system to learn new moves. It also is 4-player co-op, online and locally. Now, the co-op online, when I played it with my boy Faith and Lewis Hiram, it was a little broken at the time, but I believe they, since then have updated it and fixed it, and it works now. But the game is a whole lot of fun. It's in the same style and vein as Scott Pilgrim versus the World on the 360. Same art style, same feel, same approach with shops, and story as you're playing. It's a very good game. The game physics feels real tight and really responsive. Very difficult and challenging. You have to learn the combat system, but once you start learning moves, it becomes bread and butter, and you really start enjoying it and have a lot of nice combos that you can do, and weapons and variety of characters. So if you haven't discovered it, it is on PlayStation 4 as well. It is on the Nintendo Switch. It is pretty affordable. They're even making a remaster or an extended director's cut. So I highly recommend it, guys. Check it out.
The end. Misala is closed.